Welcome to episode 102. There is no better time than right now to plan your vacation getaway. Don't have the time to plan? Use the friendly travel agents at 3D Travel Company by going to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and clicking the Book Now button today on the left-hand side. Hurry and plan your trip today so you can travel away.
Welcome to Who Did That Voice, the show where we take an in-depth look at voiceover. And now, here's your host, Trenton Larkin.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today's special guest is a musical composer. Not just any composer, mind you. He's the one who wrote the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme song, Go Go Power Rangers, along with the Power Rangers Zeo theme, Power Rangers Turbo, Power Rangers in Space, and the Power Rangers SPD theme songs, along with other iconic shows such as the Mummies Alive theme song. And let's not forget X-Men the Animated Series. Some of these are the most iconic theme songs of all times. Here's a little mashup of some of the amazing music he's composed. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Who Did That Voice. Today on the show, I am so excited to be bringing you an interview with Ron Wasserman. Ron, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Hello, everybody.
Well, Ron, the very first thing that we like to do when we have a special guest is to get to know them. So tell me about little Ron, the young boy that grew up into the writer and composer of music that he became today.
I started playing piano when I was 3.
Wow.
And then, just diddling around a bit. And then started lessons probably when I was 4 or 5.
Goodness.
And actually wrote my first composition when I was 5.5 that got
Wow.
published into like finger exercise books.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just a simple little thing, but yeah, I guess I already had melody down when I've gone back and a year ago and saw the sheet music. We have it somewhere in the house. And I went, yeah, well, I understood a repetitive melody back then. So anyways, I played piano, and what I would do, they were classical lessons, and what I would do is I had a cassette recorder, and I'd have the teacher play the whole piece for me. And then what I was able to do then is just hear something and play it back. But I would spend the week kind of doing my own version. I never really learned to read. I can read and listen, I can't read and play.
Oh, wow.
And it would take about 6 months for the teachers to figure it out. I mean, I knew enough about when to flip the page and whatnot, but then they figured out I wasn't really reading it because I was giving it my own little style. And they would ask me to do it their way or leave. And that happened all the way up to college when I was taking music theory, and the instructor asked me outside of the classroom to leave.
Wow. Goodness.
No, he said, "You're not really going with the program." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm sorry." But, you know, I may have resisted it to some point too, thinking this isn't something that you should be taught. You shouldn't be thinking about what you read in the book. It should come from your soul. And that's it. So growing up, played piano, and when you're not good at sports, I mean, really not good at sports, so bad that in junior high, they put me in with kids with special ed.
Oh, goodness gracious.
I mean, horrible. So when you're horrible at all that kind of stuff, and you're not terribly cool in any way, playing piano makes you cool enough with people. So I'm very fortunate that I had that, or who knows how many times I would have got beat up.
Goodness gracious. Well, you know, I was a theatrical music kind of guy, singing in choir, doing the shows and stuff in high school. So I understand about the whole not being cool thing. You know, sports wasn't really my thing either. So
yeah, I don't have that gene, and either does my son, and either my wife is even worse than me. So yeah, it's just not in some people. That's it. It's okay.
Absolutely. So when you were a young boy and, you know, growing into the, you know, young man and college student that you were, and now, you know, adult, when you were writing music, especially in those younger years, you know, did you have any inspiration? Were there people that you really looked up to in the music industry, whether they were long since passed or, you know, modern day heroes to you in the music industry?
Well, I would flip around. One of the things that I always did is just flip around the radio dial. I remember I had like a really good FM radio, and back then they had manual tuners where you had to just slowly turn the knob and you could dial stuff in. Because I had the whole house wired, I had the whole house bugged.
Wow.
I mean, I've just always recorded everything, but I had big antennas up on the roof, and and then I got a ham radio, and I would listen to stuff down in South America. There were stations playing Brazilian music, but let me go back. So it's a big, giant hodgepodge of things that influenced me, but I listened to a lot of Gershwin, but I also listened to a lot of pop stuff.
Okay.
But I listened to a lot of foreign radio stations as well. So they all had their influence, but later in my teen years, it was definitely more progressive rock, hard rock, and Gershwin, and you know, it bounced around.
That's awesome. Well, you definitely have a mixture of styles there and music types that really kind of influenced you, and I can see kind of where we're heading with our interview today.
Yeah, it's paid off having studied those styles, because on these shows I've done for the past several years, though, you know, we want a 1985 hip hop track, we want a country thing, we want, it runs the gamut. So I'm able to just draw from those years.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you're one of those people that just kind of has that soul and that heart for music. And you probably start, you know, somebody says, this is kind of what we're looking for, and your heart and soul are starting to make something, and you just let it out, you know, versus like reading a book or like, you know, something. It's very more personal and very, you know, from the heart versus, you know, just kind of old hat, you know?
Yeah. Usually the idea will come really quick. So if I've had a conversation, say in the car, I try not to think about it at all, because once it starts popping into my head, then I've got to either pull over and start recording it on the phone, or I have handheld recorders everywhere. But I've learned I can hold it off until I get in the studio in front of a piano, and then start working it out. And sometimes go, wow, this is great. Sometimes go, wow, that sounded really good in my head, but it sucks. And try to erase it out of my brain.
Well, Ron, the very first thing I want to dive into today is something that I'm an extremely huge fan of, and I listen to this actually a lot, just at work or when I'm doing stuff on the weekends. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme song, dude.
Yeah.
Like, wow, dude, epic. I was like, I got to get this guy on my show. Who did it? You know, and I looked it up, and you know, I was like, I got to have Ron on my show. This is going to be epic. So, where did Mighty Morphin Power Rangers come from?
Well, I had been at Saban. I got a job there part-time. I went in one night to help record a composer that was working for him. And we spent the first 7 hours chatting, and the last hour he worked, and he did 3 1-minute cues. He was a trumpet player, great trumpet player. And he just put together 3 nondescript general cues, and he got $150 each for them. And I was,
Wow.
you know, living on credit cards and starving. I went, wait a minute, I've got to learn more about this. So I really just parked myself in that business until they hired me.
Yeah.
And then spent my first 3 years mixing, like Shuki Levy, which was one of Haim Saban's partners, mixing his stuff and some of the other guys. And I kept writing and submitting, and producers were giving me notes, and I had to break the songwriter format and learn more about scoring, and which is ironic considering the first big break was a song. But anyway, So they came in. I can never remember if they showed me footage or if they just said it's going to be a show called Power Rangers, and the saying is it's called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And we need a theme tonight. And ironically, that night, I wanted to work on a song that I was doing with my wife, who's a singer. But so I think that extreme deadline and like, oh man. So that even added more angst to the rock thing. So from the time they told me to the time it was done was 2.5 hours. And
Holy cow.
I thought, I'm just throwing on my guide vocal, because the original version's exactly a minute. And then the next day they said, Fox loves it. And I said, great, who's going to sing it? And they said, no, we're not even going to change the mix. When when the network loves something, leave it alone. So that was the beginning of the, going from being the engineer guy that nobody really spoke much to being the star composer.
Wow.
It was practically overnight.
So Power Rangers was your real beginnings then?
Yeah. I mean, I had been in bands in the 80s and almost been signed. And then I worked with this gal named E.G. Daly, who was Pee Wee Herman's girlfriend in his movies.
Yeah.
And she had a deal on A&M Records. And so, we did all sorts of big shows, and that was a lot of fun. And then she did Saturday Night Live to playback, which wasn't really acceptable back then.
Yeah.
And that literally killed her career over the weekend. She got dropped the following Monday. And I was out of a job, but it was a great band because I cannot remember the guitar player, but the bass player was a guy named Matt Bissonette, who played with David Lee Roth and everybody else. And the drummer was Matt Sorum, that went on to play with Guns N' Roses.
Oh, wow. That's epic.
Which is a gig I missed by 2 weeks. I could have been in Guns N' Roses, but I missed it by 2 weeks.
Wow, that's crazy, man. Well, Ron, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is super epic. Yeah. The next thing I wanted to talk about is still in line with Power Rangers. I believe you actually did Power Rangers Zeo theme, the Turbo theme, In Space, and the SPD theme. Is that correct?
Yeah. But
Wow.
my favorites are MMPR and SPD. SPD was, that thing just explodes.
It was
love
so
that thing.
good, man. And I'm surprised that you said SPD. I thought you might have said Zeo, because I liked Zeo a lot because it was very similar to Mighty Morphin. But Zeo was really cool. I loved In Space, but SPD was rocking, dude. It was so kick butt. I loved it.
Well, that's when just like the first theme, when I did SPD, I think I had 1 or 2 notes from Disney. So, because after Power Rangers took off, even though I had complete freedom to score the show, and I could do songs until certain rules were put in place. But, you know, when a show gets big, then everybody who's got absolutely no musical talent whatsoever gets involved with the music and the writing, and it just starts to kind of go downhill.
Okay.
So, you know, a theme, of course, well, this theme's got to outdo the first one, but sound like it. And, you know, you can't just sit and deliver something because you've already have all these rules that are put in your head.
Wow.
You know, it'd be like putting, you won the Indy 500. That's brilliant. And then you go back to the track and now there's 400 signs that you have to read. Like, don't go too fast. Watch that curve. Slow for this pedestrians crossing. And you know, so it's like that because they start planning so much stuff in your head.
Yeah.
And I've long since learned to just listen and go, no, you're right. Yeah, no. And then just forget about it.
Because otherwise you'd have a massive headache. I can't even talk. I guess after that you would definitely have a massive headache. I would assume. Yeah,
or I'd end up just sitting there and I'd come up with something and go, ooh, I like that. Oh, that's right. I can't do that. Ooh, this part's good. No, that's right. They want it to be like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that starts getting in the way. So they were great, but they didn't have the same oomph.
Yeah.
And then SPD, they just said, do you want to submit a theme? That was the only thing. And then afterwards he said, everybody's flipping out. They love it. And I think they said, can you add some sirens or something? I can't quite remember. There's one change.
Yeah, it kind of has a siren thing because they're the SPD Police Rangers, which they were really, really cool. That was a really good season that Disney did. The Rangers were good in that. The music was amazing. And now it makes sense because you were involved.
But again, they had bought it from Saban and it was not doing well. It had, you know, it always has had its core following, but it wasn't doing well. Then SPD hits, it becomes huge again. And so, boom, they say, wow, now we should do some rap.
Yeah.
So it's the normal, it's working great. Let's break it.
Yeah.
They really broke it.
Yeah, some of the theme songs after SPD were kind of like, no, you know? I mean, you kind of want to skip over them, but now they've become part of the history of Power Rangers. And so it's kind of sad to see how some things went. But, you know, they've kind of tried to get back to the roots in some of the newer seasons since Saban has bought it back. But even those don't really compare to the original themes. You know, from like Zeo and Mighty Morphin.
Well, haven't they? They just keep redoing the old theme with, you know, this one's called Power Rangers Go to Mars. So it's go Power Rangers to Mars. Go. You know, they're just.
Yeah, it's not really unique songs. It's just kind of rehashing the same thing, like you said, and throwing in whatever words they need to fit it. So.
Yeah. It's just, they're taking the easy way out and thinking that'll work. And that's not such a good idea when you've had such a well-known original theme.
Yeah. Well, I still love the original and listen to it to this day. And, you know,
thanks.
You're very welcome, Ron. Thank you, because without you, we wouldn't have the, you know, kick butt rock and roll, you know, song we have. When it comes to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Ron, didn't you also work on some of the Green Ranger or White Ranger songs as well?
Oh yeah. Any song that they would come up with, any color,
that's
anything.
Awesome.
The only thing I never liked, and people wanted me to recut when I recut everything in 2012, everyone was wondering why I didn't do what was it, White Ranger Tiger Power?
Yeah.
And I said, in this day and age, and this is 2012, but I said, in this day and age, just having white and power in the same line just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah.
And because everybody reads into everything now, especially now more than ever.
Yeah.
And, you know, we'll decode it and go, I know what he meant. He's saying white power. And so, it would become that. But back in the early 90s, they're like, oh, I'm looking at the picture and I see that it's this plastic white tiger thing running above the ground.
Yeah. Well, I
Very
love
slowly with somebody spinning the background behind it.
well, I loved the White Ranger theme, but I really loved the Green Ranger theme because you had a Green Ranger one too. I mean, there was a lot of awesome stuff that you did with that show, and the music was just epic. But we're gonna dive into a couple of shows. We are now actually celebrating 25 years this 2018 for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So I'm so glad we got to talk about that.
Ow. It's so hard to accept that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But, last year we actually celebrated 20 years of Mummies Alive, which you wrote the theme song to that as well. And that is such an epic theme. I love ancient Egypt. I love history. And I love kind of that, Power Ranger-esque feel to it where the characters transform. Such an epic theme. Where did your concept for that come from, Ron?
That one, I remember they sent me, and I probably still have it stored away on a drive somewhere. They had sent me the breakdown of the story and the pictures of what the characters were going to be. So I just thought, well, I'm going to do something fast because everybody loves fast and I love fast. And I'm going to just try to speak this part out as quickly as I can and then have some sort of whoa sound going somewhere. And it was, when I first delivered it, everybody except Andy Hayward, who was running that company, Deke Entertainment, everybody loved it except him. So I think I wrote on that show, it was pretty minimal, maybe another four different themes.
Okay.
And then they finally talked him into going with that one.
The first one.
And yeah, the first one, which
epic.
happened with him on every show I ever did. I would deliver the first one. He'd go, nah. And sometimes wrote on one show, I can't remember, wrote 27 themes. I mean, they're very simple.
Yeah.
Before I did up the production. Once you're in that far, you're practically giving them a piano and a vocal and just going, well, how's this? And then, yeah.
That's wild.
But they always ended up going back to the very first one.
That's wild. Well, a lot of times the first is the best and you don't realize it until you have other things to go, you know what, the first one was the best, so, but sometimes it just takes that to initially move forward,
Yeah. So these days, the max I'll submit is, unless they're short, which most themes are now, 8 or 10 seconds. If they're that long, I'll submit 5.
Yeah.
But if they're any longer than that, and especially if they're going to have vocals, 2 max. And what I'll do is I'll do one that I love and then a wild card so that they just go, no, the other one's much stronger.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I go completely with the grain and just a little bit against it on the second submission. That works out really well.
Nice. Well, when you're creating the theme songs, you actually create the music, but compose the music, but the people that are singing them or talking on them, those are different people, right? Or is
it depends on the theme. Yeah.
Okay.
It depends on the theme. Like obviously, back again to Saban when I did Sweet Valley High, that's my wife singing.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Mummies Alive is me.
That's you actually singing.
Is.
Oh. Wow.
Oh yeah, that's me.
That's epic.
And then I can do a bit of voices. I mean, I was Barney Rubble for the Flintstones for a while and some Warner Brothers projects.
That's
and yeah,
awesome.
I'd put my guide vocal on as Barney Rubble, which was really hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure most people don't even know who the Flintstones are. It's an old 60s cartoon, but they were doing this thing. And Barney's voice was just really hard to sing. And they auditioned like 100 people to do Barney Rubble. And they said, you sound the most like him. So I'm able to tweak my voice a bit.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that, Ron. So thank you for sharing that with me because that makes you even more of a threat in the music world. singing and composing. That's awesome.
You work with enough singers, you're like, I'm going to find a way to do it myself. It's why, like on the Power Rangers stuff, and on all the other themes, why I play everything. Because the thought, all the years of dealing with bands and saying, where's the bass player? What? How come nobody showed up? Doesn't anybody want to work?
Yeah.
I mean, it's very peculiar. It's a little different now. There's this small network of people I could draw on if I have to.
Yeah.
But also now there's no time. When it has to be done, it has to be done fast. So I've just learned to do it myself.
Well, that, sometimes trusting on yourself and relying on yourself is the best way to know it's going to get done and meet your timetable. I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah,
But,
and you can fix it, because I remember on the Mummies theme, they said, well, we're going with the first one, but you pronounced one name wrong. And I can't remember what it was. I think I called him Scarab.
Okay.
And it was, what was the real, do you happen to remember?
The villain's
what the
name is
character name?
Scarab. Yeah.
All right, so I must have said Scarab or something. Oh, look, it was the same thing with Power Rangers. I do remember making one call and going, Morphin, not morphine, right? It's Morphin, because I think they just told me what it was and left, and I just went, wait a minute, is it go? Is it Mighty Morphin, Mighty Morphine? And I said, it can't be morphine. Maybe it is morphine. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? I mean, it almost sounds logical. It's not, like a bunch of drug addicts. Like, power up! Yeah.
Those hidden meanings in music.
Yeah, wow. I know.
So what he says
it's like
is
a
we
Power
should...
Rangers
a power trip.
SPD, where I stack the vocals. If you listen to the very last time I say it, and this happens, there's all sorts of audio tricks that happen when you're combining sounds.
Yeah.
It sounds clear as day. Power Rangers STD. Somehow the P got cut, so I accidentally said Power Rangers sexually transmitted diseases in the last one.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
No
That's
one
crazy.
ever noticed it, but when I pointed it out, people went back and listened. They're like, oh my gosh, the last one does sound like Power Rangers STD.
Well, sometimes those P's and the T's, they, just the wrong slight twist of the tongue, and you've got the different letter,
Yeah, especially when you have to really stack vocals like I do.
Yeah, I understand. Well, we're going to talk about one more main theme, and there's so many others you've worked on. The X-Men theme from 1992. Last year, we celebrated 25 years for X-Men, the animated series, which is to this day one of my most favorite shows of all time. I've interviewed Cyclops, I've interviewed Beast, and I've interviewed Rogue on the show, and it's super epic that we have had some of these X-Men characters on the show, and now you, the composer of their theme song, which is super epic.
Oh, that was a great theme. I was so glad that it didn't have to be another vocal theme, because you think about trying to come up with a clever way to sing something with X-Men, X-Man, X-Men. I mean, it's not a musical phrase. It's like X-Men. It's not.
It doesn't roll off the tongue.
There's no music to the phrase.
Yeah.
Because that's what you do when there's a phrase on a show or anything. People say things musically. Like I just went like this, ba 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 ba. But X-Men, it's just so. Anyways, that was a very difficult, lots of notes, way too many tracks, and let's add another sound, and let's add another sound, and I just remember it being just this enormous task. But at the end of the day, it turned out great.
I mean, people to this day still talk about that show and that theme song. When you compare or talk about different projects, like different X-Men projects and stuff, that's what my first shows were the X-Men and Spider-Man show that Fox Kids did. And so those were my first real immersions into the world of Marvel. The music is just so inspirational and powerful. And, it's just one heck of a way to start the show off. That's for sure.
Now that Spider-Man theme, was that the one done by The Edge from the band U2? Did it go Spider-Man,
Yes.
Radioactive?
Yeah.
That's right. Because I remember I heard it and I go, at no disrespect to one of the best bands in the world and one of the best guitar players, that theme sucks, in my opinion. Well, it just doesn't capture it just sounds like it was done quickly.
Yeah. kind of
That's what
rushed.
it felt like to me.
I'm
Yeah,
not
it
necessarily
didn't
a
feel like
fan.
it had the heart.
I'm not necessarily a fan of that theme song. I think, it's okay, but the show
It's
itself was
good. Yeah, it's
amazing. The
good.
show and the cast are amazing on that
Oh, the
show.
show is
So,
great.
yeah.
It was absolutely great. I just was just thinking this should just have a lot more movement, and it should have, I don't know, something. But that guy doesn't write TV themes, and I couldn't write U2 songs, so we're even.
Well, maybe one day in your spare time you can throw up a YouTube video where you've rescored it the way you think it should have sounded, and then we can all vote on how it sounds.
Oh, that would be. Oh, that's an interesting thought. That would be, yeah.
I would totally hit
really
that up. I would
interesting.
totally watch it and share it and be like, check out this theme song from Ron Wasserman and see what you think, how it pairs up with the video from our beloved Spider-Man, our intro. So I think that would be pretty cool.
Fun.
I think it would be fun. So, well,
yeah, that's a good idea.
Ron, we're going to have to wrap up here pretty quick, but there's just a couple of shows I wanted to mention. You worked on Technomon, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes. I can't remember what I did on it, but yes.
You worked on Dino Squad, and a couple of the newer projects you've worked on for Nickelodeon have been Belle and the Bulldogs and the Thundermans. One of the older projects you worked on back in the 90s was Tekkamon Blade, which was an anime. But you've worked on a lot of iconic entities and franchises, and for some amazing companies, Saban, Disney, Nickelodeon, and lots of others. You've done a lot of TV shows and stuff, but we focus more on animation and cartoons and stuff, and films that deal with voiceover and that kind of stuff. But you've done so many wonderful things. You've made such a great impact on the world, Ron.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, man. You're very welcome. I can't thank you enough for being on the show, but I just have a couple of questions for you, and we will wrap up. The first being, is there a way people can reach out to you if they have questions about your music or just want to get to know you, or, social media is so big today, but not everyone uses it. So,
yeah. Facebook is good. I always check that every few days. And then my composer site is ronw.com.
Okay.
So, or ronwasserman.com, which will take you to ronw.com.
Awesome.
And there's a way to email me directly there. It doesn't go to some stranger that pretends to be me.
That's awesome. Yeah, today there's so many fake Facebook pages and websites, and you're like, is this really the person or is it somebody else? So it's so hard to know.
It was kind of a shock. I forgot what they do, but somebody at Facebook must have liked me because I got the blue check.
Yeah.
So it says,
verified.
Facebook confirmed this is the authentic profile for this public figure.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, it helps.
That's
it
good.
definitely helps.
Blue check.
Well, Ron, I have one final question for you. And that question is, what is the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I would, and it's already been in action.
Yeah.
I love when I get, over the years, when I've gotten emails from guys who said, I picked up a guitar because of you. Now I'm in a band and we're getting a deal. I don't know what happened with most of those people who ever said that. And then the kids that were being abused, and they said, I would just lock myself in the room and watch that show over and over and over again, not just because I like the show, but I was able to get through the day because I felt something from the music and that theme. It gave me the only power I had at that time in my life.
Yeah.
These are obviously people who were abused, now grew up and have gone to therapy and dealt with stuff. So that stuff is unbelievable. And then I've actually had about 10, I've got 80 or 90,000 emails I've answered, but about 10 kids who claim that, I was done. I was going to kill myself. And then I thought, I heard your stuff, or I listened to it, and it got me through that moment. And so that's the stuff that is the biggest payoff in the world. So I think that's the thing. And I made a tiny little contribution. So the payoff I've lived to see, which is great.
That's amazing. Well, you know, the legacy that you have created is amazing, and it's going to continue to grow. I know that much.
Yeah, let's hope so. I mean, but this was still, it wasn't the golden time of television, and not talking about how great things were, because they're much better now. But there was still that time where there was only a couple channels and things would get so huge. And that's why they have these conventions and whatnot. It's just a callback, because things were a little simpler then. And now there's so much product and so much stuff. So although a show like the Thundermans on Nickelodeon, that's been their most successful and now longest running sitcom, it'll never have the impact. There won't be a convention for it in 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's also, everybody has a very short attention span now, understandably, because we're all bombarded constantly with stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's nice to have been part of that time. So I agree with you. There's a good chance it'll go on for another good while.
Well, you have to think, Ron, the theme song that you created with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, above all else, I mean, I'm sorry, X-Men and Mummies Alive and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers are all super epic to me. And I think comparability-wise, you could say Mighty Morphin and X-Men are probably on pretty much the same level. People may not agree with me on that, but Mummies Alive to me is on that same level, and a lot of people I probably would think may or may not think the same, but Mighty Morphin it takes the cake. And you, like you said, the Thundermans may be good, but they're not going to have a convention in 20 years. You've got to think that the music you wrote for that show was a huge reason why the fandom was so powerful and so strong and survived through it all. And, you know, again, realizing that you came back in SPD and really did the revival of Power Rangers through Disney when they owned the entity, that's pretty epic to realize that you spawned it and you respawned it with Mighty Morphin and then SPD. And that's pretty epic for me, Ron. I'm a Power Rangers fan to the core. And, you know, I've had David Fielding Zordon, and I've had Kerrigan Mahan, who voiced, you know, Goldar and one of the Power Rangers on one of the other series. But, you know, without your amazing music, you know, I don't think the show would have been what it is today, and there wouldn't be a convention probably 20 years later.
Yeah, it was definitely, in my opinion, it was the thing that got people to go, okay, I'll give it a chance.
It gets me fired up.
It worked. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I remember when they told me, because they do test marketing. So what they did is they pay a bunch of kids, or they had a bunch of kids come in and watch the show and listen. And, you know, they gave them pizza, and they said the moment that theme hit, the kids were like running around the room before they'd even seen the show. They were just amped up. So amped up that during that time, you know, there were, you know, I wasn't being blamed, but the music was being blamed for acts of violence that kids were committing. So then, you know, the edict came down from Tipper Gore, Al Gore, the vice president, to Bill, and I was no longer allowed to use minor chords. So in the last 4 or 5 songs I did, they're in major keys. And, you know, I couldn't say a word like fight or I couldn't do anything about that.
Wow.
So
I didn't realize that.
It got that big.
Wow. Well, I know after 9/11, they even started cutting the fight scenes down, like all the explosions and stuff. So I know that through our history, things have happened that have kind of toned our shows down, toned our theme songs down, toned certain things, so much so that it's almost like you don't have as much creativity anymore because there's so much censorship, you know. And I know a lot of people, you know, might get up in arms about that. And I'm not here to start a political debate at all, but, you know, I didn't realize,
but I mean,
you know,
the proof is in the pudding. Who's walking away with all the Emmys?
Yeah.
It's not the networks, it's the cable stations, and it's Netflix.
Yeah.
Where those rules aren't a problem.
Yeah.
That's who's taking control of the business right now.
Yeah, very true.
You know, it's really interesting. So, and they'll eventually get squashed. and
yeah.
and they'll eventually have too many executives, and they'll eventually water everything down. But what you just said, that's the proof right there.
Yeah.
Where there's freedom, there's great creativity, and that's why they're walking away with all these awards and have huge audiences.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been amazing to see some of these industries grow. But, Ron, I really can't thank you enough, man. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure having you on the show. Would you just give us a closeout today as we wrap up our episode?
Absolutely. I will say, hey, everybody, this is Ron Wasserman, and you are listening to Who Did That Voice?
Well, everyone, I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode with Ron Wasserman, the musical composer of some of the most iconic theme songs of all time. And if you did, please find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram by searching Who Did That Voice. I would love to hear from you. You know, a question you might ask yourself is, where can I listen to Who Did That Voice? That's an excellent question. You can hear us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, and our website at www.whodidthatvoice.co. Click the Episodes tab and listen away. Well, everyone, that's all the time we have for this episode. Join us next time for our special guest, Scott Page Pagter, the voice of Wolfie from Big Bad Beetleborgs. You won't want to miss this episode. Hey, do you ask yourself who did that voice? Well, if you do, go to our website, www.whodidthatvoice.co, and click on the Episodes tab. Choose an actor, pick their name, and see pictures from the different characters they voiced in their career.
Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time for more discoveries on Who Did That Voice.